Hey guys, welcome to HipHughes History. Are you ready for some nullification? Because I got some on the stove that I'm cooking up for you with a side of Sedition Act and Kentucky, Virginia resolutions. Let's see if we can't hit the conception of the Civil War out of the park today. So sit back, relax, let's see if we can't do some of the learning on the YouTubes. Here we go. So why don't we start with who's your daddy? Do you know who your daddy is? Because who's your daddy is outlined in the Constitution. I bet you didn't know that. Article 6 is the Supremacy Clause. And in federalism, where we have a division of power between the federal government and the states, the Constitution is clearly, the federal government's rule book, the law of the land. So it kind of gives them the upper hand in federalism. And of course, you have states' rights in the Constitution, clearly, really defined in the 10th Amendment. All power not delegated to the federal government is reserved, you know it, for the states. So the concept of nullification comes up early in American history with the Sedition Act and the Kentucky, Virginia resolution. So what is nullification? Nullification is a states' rights term that is going to be developed in this lecture through the Kentucky, Virginia resolutions, which basically means that we can accept the Supremacy Clause, kind of the concept that the federal government has the right, in a sense, to tell the states what to do sometimes. I use the analogy of kind of a parent telling a kid to do the dishes, or to mow the lawn, or to do things that help the family run effectively. And the child might grudgingly say it, but they will say yes, they will do those things. But if the father, if the federal government asks the child, aka the state, to go to school naked, that's when the child thinks they have it right, or at least fundamentally, philosophically, to say, no, not gonna do that. You can whoop my you-know-what, but I ain't gonna do that, Dada. No, I don't care if you're my daddy or not. So the concept of nullification is a states' rights term, kind of in the utmost sense of the child's right to reject what the parent is telling them to do, aka a state rejecting what the federal government is telling them to do. We've seen this in the news with threats of nullification coming from some southern states regarding Obamacare. But nevertheless, let's stick to the script here. The concept really first is generated in something called the Kentucky, Virginia resolutions. So why don't we take a look at that? The Sedition Act. The Sedition Act was passed in 1798 by the Federalist Congress. I believe it was the 5th Congress of the United States, and it was signed by John Adams, the Federalist. Interestingly enough, his vice president is going to write the reaction to these laws, and that's Thomas Jefferson. Before the 12th Amendment, you could have a president and an opposing vice president of another party. So these two guys are kind of, working together, but they don't like each other very much, that's for sure. The Sedition Act is really a response, a congressional federalist response, to the French Revolution. We have kind of a quasi-war with France going on, and the French Revolution is very anti-authoritarian, it's very bloody, they chop heads off, for God's sakes. So this kind of runs a chill up the Federalist spine, who really have been crafting kind of a strong federal government. And kind of there's a worry in the air, I believe, that, the French could bring this to America and they could be chopping off the heads of, Hamilton and such. So the alien part is specifically really regarding the French, and it gave the government, immigration powers to limit the French coming here and to eventually expel Frenchmen who were living in America who were believed to be a threat. The sedition part is much clearer. The sedition part basically says that if you print anti-government, what they would call propaganda in the newspaper, that you're threatened to be arrested and convicted and go to jail. And there were numerous publishers and people that wrote articles that were sent to prison for freedom of the press, basically. But that's one part of it. You can kind of understand that, the Federalists kind of went overboard here, and really bringing George Washington's farewell address and the fear of the political party system to true life, that the political party system is not operating in the best interest of the United States, but they're really doing self-survival type of stuff. The Sedition Act is really an unconstitutional law that is meant to help the Federalists, even though the Democratic Republicans are going to use part of it after they get elected. Ain't that the truth? But at the end of the day, really we have an unconstitutional law, but we don't have judicial review yet, so we're kind of stuck with it. And I think that kind of changes the context of what the reaction is and whether we're going to be okay with the reaction or not. And the reaction is what's important. So let's react! So James Madison, and really Thomas Jefferson, write a response, a series of newspaper articles that are called the Kentucky, Virginia resolutions. And really it's a philosophical statement. It's nothing that's really legal, but it is going to really, what I call, conceptualize, or at least be the conception period sperm egg, ew, but of the Civil War, of really giving the states the idea that they aren't subject to the will of the federal government, that they have a right to do things that the Constitution might not clearly state they have a right to do. And this is the no, I ain't going to school naked part. The Kentucky-Virginia resolutions outline the concept of nullification. Nullification basically means no. I nullify that. I'm not going to do that. And really what Jefferson, more than Madison, is saying in these papers is that, if the federal government oversteps its constitutional bounds by passing these types of legislation or laws, that states have a right to rebel, that the people have a right to rebel, that the state has a right to say no. And later, as we get closer to the Civil War, I think it'll become pretty apparent that the southern states are resting on that philosophy to the utmost degree when they secede from the Union, saying, I don't even have to be part of this family anymore. I nullify you and your mama, and I'm out of here. That we're not a union, but we're basically a confederation. That's kind of, I think, at the heart of nullification and the Kentucky-Virginia resolutions. Let's do a little bit more. So the question is nullification a constitutional mechanism that states are allowed to use today? And I think most scholars would agree with me. I'm going to go out on a limb here and I'm going to say no, that's not going to work anymore. Really two reasons. Number one, you have judicial review. So if a state believes that a federal government law or a presidential action outsteps the bounds of the Constitution, they have judicial check and balance. They can turn to the courts to solve that problem. They don't need to rebel, secede, nullify against the federal government. And I think that the second reason is Civil War. We won. I don't know. The Union won. The federal government won. Really saying to the southern states, like it or not, you're part of this family. So you can disagree, you can throw eggs at me, you can X me, you can leave comments, you can do whatever you want, but HipHughes is done. So I'm done, stick a fork in me. Make sure you check out other lectures, guys, all right? Final exams are upon us right now. We have 95 US lectures. We have about 15 world lecture, tons of government lectures and election videos. I also have a whole bunch of EDU gurus that are listed down in the description. All you gotta do is press the button and you can go check out some of those awesome pages. And certainly you wanna subscribe, because every time you subscribe, I don't know if you know this or not, but a child learns to read. How cool is that? Where attention goes, energy flows, and Mr. HipHughes is, I don't want to shout, I don't like to pout, I don't even eat sauerkraut, I'm out!